Hi guys, we're going to talk a little bit about making masks today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the materials that you can find in and around your house, and what is going to work really well and what is going to work not as well. And then we have some no-sew tutorials for how to do things with a bandana. I'll also be showing you how to make these nice sewn fabric masks. This has a hair tie as my elastic, but you can also make them with ribbons or a couple of the other materials that we're going to talk about today. So let's get started and see what we can do to make sure that you guys stay safe and stay covered out there. Remember, they have asked that in New York State, anytime you go out in public where you can't effectively social distance, which means keeping at least 6 feet between you and whoever else is around you in public, that they do recommend that you wear a mask. So places like the grocery store, the post office, the pharmacy, things that we all need to do on a day-to-day basis that we can't avoid. I'm going to talk a little bit about materials that you can use as ties, materials that you can use as fabric, and all different ways to combine them to keep you guys as safe and as healthy as possible. So let's talk about the fabrics that we can use when making our masks. There are a ton of things you probably have lying around your house. Some of these things are going to work better than others. The CDC recommends using a tightly woven cotton fabric. The easiest way you can do it is with a bandana. Make sure it's clean and washed before you put it on your face. You can also use something like this, which is the leftovers from a pillowcase that we use to make a mask in the same size as a bandana. Old bed sheets, cotton fabric if you have any, or something like a bandana are all going to be great choices because the fabric is woven really tightly together. So all of the fibers are really close together and fewer particles can get in or out of your mask. As a last resort, if you don't have a bandana or a pillowcase, you can also use a t-shirt. Now, if you can see when I stretch this t-shirt, you can actually see through that. Because it's a stretchy knit fabric, the fibers aren't as close together. They're a lot looser, which means it's easier for things to get through. So this no-sew t-shirt tutorial with the ties built in is a great fix if you don't have any other options, but I would definitely use this as a last resort. One of the other things you can use are reusable shopping bags. Now, there are lots of different kinds of reusable shopping bags. Again, I always recommend that you wash whatever material you have before you put it on your face. Most of these bags can be machine washed, and there are lots of different kinds of bags. One of the most important things that you want to look for is a tag on the inside that will tell you what your material is. You're looking for something like this that says non-woven polypropylene. That's important because that non-woven polypropylene, if you can see on the inside here, this is exactly what N95 masks are made out of in a slightly different finished product. So these have a pretty strong filtration quality to them, although they're not as comfortable. So instead of using a no-sew tutorial, I would recommend maybe using the bag as the outside portion of a sewable version, which I'll show you in another video. The other thing that you want to look for, if your bag doesn't have a tag in it like this one, is you are looking for this sort of textured fabric, and I'll see if I can get you a close-up in here so that it looks sort of like a surgical mask you may have seen. Now, the outside of this bag is plasticky and it would be hard to breathe through because it's got an additional coating on it, so I wouldn't recommend using the outside of that bag, just the inside. But it's small pieces, so it may be harder to use. I've got this bag from Target. It was 99 cents, and I've been using this to make masks. If you center it in a certain way, you can get 4 masks out of this bag. If you don't center it to line it up with the bullseye in the middle, you can get a lot more. And this is that same sort of woven fabric. So this is what you're looking for. This will give you probably the best filtration possible. But like I said, it may not be the most comfortable. What I would avoid is any bag like this that's shiny and plastic on the outside. Although it may be the right material on the inside, you won't be able to breathe through this special waterproof coating that's been put on the bag. So these unfortunately will not work. So dig through your stash, see what you have. A lot of us also have old cotton canvas tote bags that you can use. Be creative and don't be afraid to look around and see what you can find. These are all materials that I had just laying around my house. If you have any questions, let us know. Stay safe out there. Let's talk about materials. There are lots of different choices that you can use for making both your masks and the ties with just things that you have around your house. Right now, I'm showing you a variety of options that you can use to tie your mask, whether it's hair elastics, rubber bands, a cotton t-shirt cut into strips, ribbon, even a shoelace or a headband. You can also use tights to make loops. Now, when you're using tights, you want to make sure you're finding the heaviest fabric you have available. These are specifically shaping tights, which means the fabric will be a little thicker and a little bit more sturdy in terms of how elastic they are, which means you may be able to wash them. The other thing that you can look for when you're purchasing tights, if this is what you want to use or if you have some at home, is right here. This will tell you how heavy the fabric is, and the higher the number, the better. If you do want to use tights as ties, it's really easy to make yourself some loops. You're just going to take your tights, and these are the toes. Trim the toes off. And then notice that I'm cutting both legs at the same time, so I get two loops that are about even. You want to cut your loops about 1 inch wide, because this fabric will roll up once it's cut. Now I have two identical loops. They'll stretch pretty well. You can use these for our no-sew version. If you're going to do this as the loops for the sew version, which is going to be in another video, then I would actually cut these loops in half. And then you'll sew the ends of these strips onto the corners of your masks. If you don't have tights, then some other options are rubber bands, although I would not recommend using these if you're going to put something in the washing machine. These would be for something that are like a bandana mask that you're going to fold out and take apart every time you use it, or for a mask that you're only going to wear once and throw away. You can also use shoelaces. I recommend a new pair if you can get them. If you can't get a new pair, definitely wash them before you put them on your mask. Remember, this is going by your face, and you want to avoid putting germs on your face. Some cut-up t-shirts. And you can also make these when you're making our no-sew t-shirt material. This one has those ties built right into it. You can use ribbon, and there are a couple different types of ribbon. Now, if you notice this green ribbon, it's very shiny and satiny. This is not a type of ribbon that I would recommend because it's very slippery. It won't stay tied, and you'll have to adjust your mask often. This white ribbon is what's called grosgrain ribbon, and as you can see, it's got a little bit of texture to it, and it's a little rough. You can buy this in spools in all kinds of craft stores, and this will hold on a little better. It'll stay in a knot when you're using it as a tie, so I would definitely try and use something like this if you can. If you're doing a no-sew bandana version and you're having trouble getting it to stay, you can safety pin your hair ties in. Just be careful and make sure that you're putting the pointy end towards the inside so you don't end up with a safety pin in your face. And if you're having trouble getting your mask to fit, you can use a paper clip. To hold the two ends of your elastic, and this will save your ears and help you adjust the fit to get it as tight and as snug up against your face as possible. One of the other great things you can do with this paper clip is use it to help give your mask a nice nose shield. For those of you who wear glasses like me, something like this, which is actually two pipe cleaners twisted together, will help keep the top of your mask tight to your nose, and that will help both seal the mask a little better and prevent it from fogging up your glasses. Now, this is two regular size pipe cleaners twisted together. I've also got these great big fluffy ones, which are a little bit more cushioned, and you may not have to use as many in a single mask. Or you can unbend a paper clip and straighten it out and use it that way. If you don't have something like a pipe cleaner or a paper clip, another great option are twist ties. You'll get them on your bread, or if you're like me and you have a little kiddo, when you do treat bags for schools or things like that, those bags of treat bags will come with these little twist ties, and I'm sure we all have things like this lying around. So don't be afraid to use whatever materials you have at home. The most important thing is making sure that you're staying safe and staying protected while you're out and about. Okay, so here I have my bandana. It is freshly washed and dried, and that's really important. Keeping these clean is going to be one of the most important steps to helping you prevent getting infection. So here's my bandana. As you can see, there's a nice crease line in the middle from where it's been folded. The first step when you're making your bandana mask is to fold the fabric, top and bottom, to that fold line in the middle. Okay. Next, you're going to do it again, meeting in the middle. If there's one thing you'd like to add, and that's what my pipe cleaners are here for those of us who do wear glasses, it is a pain. Your glasses get fogged up. One of the reasons that is because your mask doesn't have a tight enough seal across your nose. So you can add something like a pipe cleaner, and now notice that this is two pipe cleaners twisted together. That'll give it a little more cushion and make it a little stronger. I also have these really fat pipe cleaners. If you don't have a pipe cleaner, you can also use a paper clip. You're just going to unfold it, and you want to keep it as straight as possible. And then bend it in slightly in the ends, so that way it's not going to poke through. And we're going to tuck that in underneath the top fold in the center. With our bandana, we're going to use the pipe cleaners just because it'll stay a little better in there that way. Once you have your nose piece in, or if you don't need one, you can skip that step, you're going to take your hair ties and slip them over the ends. Now you want to leave about 6 inches in the middle. If you're not sure how wide 6 inches is, it's going to be about the width of your two hands. Now that you have your hair ties in, you fold the outside edges in, and tuck them into each other. and this end is going to go in towards your face. Okay, so when you're wearing your bandana style mask, remember the flat side with no folds goes on the outside, and the ends, which you folded over your hair ties, and as you can see, I've substituted rubber bands for this video because my head was a little too big to use just the hair ties. You're going to pinch to feel where your pipe cleaners are that you added to go over the bridge of your nose, and you're going to hook them over your ears, and I'm going to take off my glasses. Remember, it's really important that these masks cover both your nose and your mouth. You can help prevent a lot more spread of germs if you're keeping both of these things covered, and you want the seal of the mask to be as tight as possible around your face and around your ears, all the way across the top and all the way across your chin. So keep that in mind when you're choosing either rubber bands or hair ties. You can also use something to tie it if you don't have something elastic that can go around your ears, and I'm going to show you how to do that next. Alright, so here's our no sew mask tutorial part 2. We're going to be using a pillowcase. These are nice because they're made out of cotton, they're easily washable. The fabric is a pretty tight weave, which means it gives you a little bit better protection than, say, a t-shirt, which I'll show you a little bit later. And one of the nice things about a twin size pillowcase like this one is that it's already the width that we want it to be. So we're going to cut our fabric into a 20 by 20 square, which is the size of a bandana, and a regular size pillowcase is, nicely enough, already 20 inches across. So we're just going to cut 20 inches wide. And I have a really nice quilting ruler because I do a lot of sewing at home, but for those of you that don't, you can use just a regular ruler like this that's only 12 inches. You can print a ruler online, and I can add a link in the comments below or in the description. If you have something that you know the width of, say a book or a piece of string, you can use that too. Get creative here because I know that we're all have limited access to materials. So let's start by cutting our pillowcase into a 20 by 20 square. Alright, so I've gone ahead and cut my pillowcase into my 20-inch square, and because it's 2 layers of fabric, I do have 2 squares. We're going to set one aside. We're also going to save the extra piece of fabric from the top that's already cut into a tube, and we'll show you why when we do another similar, slightly more complicated mask tutorial. So, much like our bandana tutorial, we're going to fold it in half, and then fold it in half again to the middle. This time, instead of using hair ties, we're actually going to use shoelaces. Now, I've tied the ends together to make this a little bit easier, and they're nice brand new shoelaces that I don't have to worry about having any germs on them. If you don't have brand new shoelaces, you can use used ones. Just make sure you wash them thoroughly and maybe even boil them before you put them on your mask. Like our bandana, we're going to lay the loops about 6 inches from the middle on both sides. And again, that's about the width of your 2 hands put together. If you don't have shoelaces, but you do have ribbon, there are some ribbons that will work a little bit better and some that won't work as well. So for example, I don't recommend using this really shiny satin ribbon. It's not going to grip as well, and it's kind of hard to see to get it to focus so that you can see how shiny it is, but it'll be very slippery and it won't stay in a knot. If you have access to it, I highly recommend using this type of ribbon, which is called grosgrain. So you can see it's got a little bit of texture to it, and that'll just stay tied a little bit better when you wear it. If you'd like, you can also add in your pipe cleaner. As you can see, it's a little bent from being used in our previous tutorial, so it's got my no shape in it already. You can also use a paper clip unfolded, and that'll be a little bit stiffer. For these masks, because they're a little loose, you may not see as much of a difference if you do add something like this. For this mask, because we're not using something that's elastic that will hold itself in, when we fold in our center pieces, we're going to take one additional step. Using a stapler, we're going to staple the corners where our ties come out. And I'd like to note that you should be making sure that you're putting the smooth edge of the staple inside, closest to your skin. This is a little hard because my stapler is a little small, but it does go through the fabric pretty nicely, as long as it's folded nice and neat. Once it's stapled like this, I don't recommend putting it through the wash. You don't want those staplers to get lost in your washing machine. So this is still going to be a one-time use mask, or you just have to restaple it every time you use it. So now let's take a look and see how you would tie this one on rather than using the elastic to secure it. So remember, just like our bandana mask, we're going to put the flat side on the outside and the ends that we tucked in on the inside. The CDC recommends when you're putting on a mask with ties instead of with elastic that you start by tying the mask around your neck. Then bring the mask above your face and tie the ties so that they're high on your head, which will help keep them tighter and more secure against your face. Again, it's important for the mask to form a tight seal across the top of your face and along the bottom of your face. If you're like me and you wear glasses, I don't recommend wearing the ribbon tie ones unless you have someone to help you out tie them on, because I find that they tend to knock my glasses off my face, and then I have to touch my glasses and my face a lot more frequently with that type of mask on. So I do prefer the elastic because I can also tuck the elastics over the end of my glasses, and that helps hold them on. Alright, so these are the two easiest methods. We're going to show you one more method using either a t-shirt or the leftovers from our pillowcase. Let's take a look. Our last method of making a mask without using a sewing machine or hand sewing is going to be using an old t-shirt, or you can also use the leftovers from your pillowcase if you use the pillowcase tutorial that I showed you in a previous video. If you're like me and you have a lot of t-shirts sitting around from your college days or just old shirts that you don't wear anymore, this is a great piece to use for a mask. I would honestly use these t-shirt masks as a last resort. The reason I don't recommend them as much as, say, the bandana version or the pillowcase version that we made is because a knitted fabric has a lot larger holes in between the fibers of the fabric. And in this tutorial version, the amount of fabric you'll have on your face is only one layer thick. So you won't have as much protection as you would with something like a pillowcase, a bandana, or even one of the sewable versions that we'll show you in another video. What I've done already is I've cut a 6.5 inch strip off the bottom of my shirt. And my pillowcase was about the same, left over from my previous tutorial. For this, rather than using something to make ties, we're going to use the fabric itself to make the ties for our mask. In this case, we are going to simply cut into our fabric so that we have ties that are about 14 or 15 inches, and that should give us We want a mask that's about 7 inches wide. So this measurement is showing half of the mask because it is folded. So realistically, you want it about 4.5 inches left over from your ties, depending on the size of your t-shirt. If you make it a little big, you can just tie it a little tighter. So we're going to cut into it on the top and on the bottom to form a long rectangle. I would make these cuts about 1 inch or a little bit longer wide because you want the fabric sturdy enough so that it won't rip when you're tying it. Now I did make my solid piece at the end a little big, but that's okay. Snip the ends of the loops. And you have yourself an emergency no-sew mask without any additional materials.